I guess we'll go ahead and start. We are Appointlink. I'm Dan Glass. Yes, I am the guy who sent you all the letters that you probably received. This is Tony Forsythe. He's the owner of Appointlink. And Ian O'Neill, he's the product manager of the product MyLaw that we'll be looking at today. This session is basically, in a nutshell, it is about departments posting announcements to students using MyLaw, which is built in Microsoft SharePoint. So we'll kind of work through that. The reason we decided to do this topic this year was Tony and I got a call from one of our law school clients, and this is kind of the story of what transpired after that call. They called us up, and they had an issue they called the Docket Problem. And Tony and I jumped on an airplane, and we flew there, and we had 3 sessions for over the course of 2 days. And the sessions were with the faculty, students, and senior staff. And the whole kind of context of the meetings were talking about this Docket Problem. So in this session, in this presentation, I'm going to describe that problem. We'll talk about our analysis of that problem. We'll talk about the strategy that we kind of came up with in conjunction with that law school in solving the Docket Problem. They were familiar with our product, so they thought that the MyLaw product might be the solution. They felt MyLaw could be a good match. So we'll start with how did Appointlink get involved, and why did they decide that MyLaw might be a good match. As I mentioned, MyLaw is built in Microsoft SharePoint. It is basically a collaboration tool for departments, faculty, staff, just ways for them to communicate and collaborate. It also has a course management component. We'll look at some of the details when we get to the screenshots of all this, but for now, just kind of talk through some of the most interesting components of MyLaw. And there were other application components that we built into the MyLaw product, so these are the applications that are probably most commonly used, or at least applications that we get the most feedback about: seating chart, take-home exams, or honor code type exam components, as well as course evaluations. Photo directory is another, online forms. All these components we kind of built into this SharePoint solution. So Tony and I headed up there, and we got to talking to him about the docket. We didn't really even know what the docket was. And so, in not understanding what the docket was, we're talking with them, and they were explaining it just like this. They said it was a 30-page PDF that they published weekly. Wow. Yeah, you can imagine that. It was actually posted out to their public website, so anybody in the world could go onto their website and pull it down and look through it. It contained information from departments, organizations, and various programs that they had going on there at the law school. Student Services, or Student Affairs, was the department that was basically responsible for putting the docket together every week. It was comprised of announcements, reminders, events. It had contact information for the various departments and people. So anytime they posted an announcement, it would say, contact Jane over in this department, with all of her contact info in there. And then the last third of the docket was made up of just 10 general type announcements. So the last 10 pages were, this instructor is looking for summer research assistants to help them out on whatever project. So that was basically the last 10 pages of the docket. So it quickly became very lengthy. I'm not allowed to keep my water up here. So what was the problem with the docket? As you guys can probably already start figuring out, it took a great deal of resources. It took a lot of effort from departments and all these organizations to get this content together and then push it over to Student Services. And the output was a PDF that nobody read. Nobody was reading it. We had several discussions, and the frustration was we spend all this time, we put this thing together, and nobody ends up reading it. In student services, as I mentioned, they were basically responsible for putting this thing together, and they had become the hub of this publication. And Tony and I were talking to the dean of students, and he said, we spend so much time on this. I want to get out of the business of creating this docket. That's not what I want to do. It's not part of my mission in our department. Our mission is not to create a docket. It's to provide superior student services and programs. So it's distracting my whole department from what we're trying to do. The problem for the senior staff and the department heads was just general frustration. They were spending all this time putting this content together to ship over to student services, and they had little faith that this information that they were going to be sending over there was even going to be read once it was published into the publication. So what they would do is then they would take that same information that they sent to student services that was going into the docket, and they put it into an email, and then they blast everybody with that information because they knew they weren't going to read it in the PDF. So then they'd send out the emails. Well, you know what happens when you email blast everybody. They start ignoring that. And they found, after all that, they were still getting phone calls from students asking them about the same information that they sent to the docket and the same information that they sent over to the email. So that was their frustration. The problem for the students, in our discussion sessions with the students, it was just too much information overload. It was a hassle to search through a 30-page PDF, scrolling through that, looking for information that pertained to them. So they were missing deadlines. The information was not targeted to them. It was general information. So finding the items that pertained to them was, again, a hassle. It was easier just to pick up the phone and call, and then, again, they were pestered by those email blasts. So our analysis of the problem, if we spend some time breaking it down, we have to understand, well, what were the actual causes of this frustration? And the first is just creating it. When student services spent so much time gathering, proofing, and assembling this docket, they were, again, distracted from their mission. And they found themselves in this kind of a weird position because they were the ones determining what announcements were supposed to be at the top of the list. So they got into this political battle of which is higher priority. And I'm sure you can understand you don't want to be between the registrar and admissions deciding whose announcement goes to the top of the list or which is most important. The organization for the reader, again, it was just information overload. It was difficult to search through a 30-page PDF, and again, the information wasn't directed toward that student's role. The format, PDF posted to a website isn't exactly secure, so you posted a bunch of contact information to the world about your law school. It was updated weekly, so it wasn't easily corrected once it went out at the end of the week. As soon as it goes out, there's changes that need to be made, and now you start correcting this weekly publication. And it was what I would describe as passive in our discussions to them. It was posted to the website. The students didn't have to come look at it. So they were not pushing the information to the student. Therefore, if students wandered upon it, that was the best they could hope for. And the readership, as I discussed, we talked to a class of students or a group of students in our session, and we found that one out of the group actually read it from cover to cover. He was, I guess, somewhat of a fanatic, and that's why he came to the session, but one out of the group. The simple economic problem was all parties are looking for a quicker way to do stuff. They want to save time. And in the student's case, it was easier to pick up the phone and make a 3-minute phone call to a CSO than it was to spend 30 minutes looking through that docket for information. So what is the strategy? What's the point here? The point is we want to improve the process of creating and maintaining content at the department level. We've got to give them a better way of doing that. The second is we want to get the student services out of the business of creating a docket at this particular school or whatever department. The third point is we want to eliminate the clutter. We want to understand the relevance to the user. So we want to send information to students when they need to see it. So if that student needs to see something on a particular day it pertains to them, that's what they need to know. And then the last point is we want to push information to the user, and we don't want to expect them to have to go looking for it. So to simplify the content, we want to use simple form. We want to give them a process to enter this contact information or content. So we decided that browser-based forms would be the way to do that. It was standardized the way that they create these messages to the students rather than free-form emails over to the student services. We don't want to have to, force them to work on the docket publication deadline. We want to give them the access to push these announcements out when they need to go out rather than wait a week for it to go out. And we want to know our audience and group when we send that information to them. It just makes it easier to create that content. When we know who we're writing content for, it's much easier to say, 1Ls go here to do this, instead of writing content that says, if you're a 1L, go here. If you're a 2L, disregard this message. So it makes it a lot easier. And we want to be able to have the ability to track readership. We want to use things like read receipts so that we know that these students are getting this information and that they are reading it. I'm sorry. Again, the next point is we want to make sure that we get student services out of that role. In this particular case, student services had become an inefficient roadblock, and it was prohibiting the timeliness of that message. We want to eliminate the clutter for the user, and how do we do that is by using ways to filter and categorize and organize this content for the specific role of the user, role, time, or the filtering components. The first we'll talk about is time. If we can eliminate this clutter using time, it's just a lot less items on that student's list that they need to see. If they only need to see things for today or this week instead of for the next month, we can shorten that list for what the user actually has to look at. So time, when does that user need to see this information? And we can do that by using display on dates and expiration dates. So we're driving these announcements to the student on the date of the announcement rather than when that docket gets published or when that newsletter goes out. For filtering in terms of role, that's the subgroups of the law school body. So the 1Ls, the 2Ls, we can select those roles that we want to talk to. One example might be at this particular client, 1Ls were getting messages about ordering caps and gowns for graduation. That's not exactly what they need to be reading, so that wasn't working for them. To eliminate clutter for the user, we can also organize the content, and we can do that by using these categories. A category would be, an example of those would be an emergency type category or any kind of opportunity or responsibility that the student needs to pay attention to. It's just another way to simplify organization. It simplifies the ability for the student to search on this particular information. And it allows the student to view or search categories that may be of interest to them. So opportunities to study abroad would be an example of that. I'm sorry. Organizing based on type, just another way to classify information. Type examples would be events or deadlines, just another way of reducing the clutter and giving the student another way to, or giving the department heads a way to organize based on certain criteria. The last point that I mentioned before is pushing that information to the user. We don't want to expect the user to have to go look for this information. We want to put it where the user actually spends time. We want to kind of wrap it around things of interest to the student. So that would be course materials and within course sites. We want to be able to associate high-value features or content with those announcements. So any kind of exam component that you can put near these announcements. Photo directory, for example, is another feature that students may pay attention to if you can keep those announcements close to features like that. So the solution today, we're going to look at this MyLaw product that we talked about. We've got some screenshots, and we're going to kind of go through those, and we're going to start with creating the announcement. So here is the screenshot of a staff homepage. Every person in the law school would have a homepage, and it would be what you would see on the homepage is based on your role that we discussed. So here you can see that a staff member would have school announcements, but these announcements would pertain to that particular user group or role. And they're going to have deadlines, and they're going to have general announcements as well, but you can see that their deadlines are specific to a staff member. And this staff member just happens to be a member of the registrar's office, is where we're going to look. So if we were to jump into the departments page and drop that down and select registrar, we would jump into the registrar's office. And again, because we are a staff member of a registrar's office, you can see up at the top right-hand corner that we have the department administrative tool. So if I was a student and I logged on to the registrar's department page, I wouldn't see that particular web part. Each of those squares there is known as a web part in SharePoint, which I'm sure most of you are probably familiar with some of the SharePoint functionality. At the top there under registrar's office, we have just general content about that department. And again, we have the announcements that are specific to this user from the registrar's office. So the deadlines in general there under announcements are only announcements coming from the registrar's department. So for a registrar staff member to create an announcement for a student, this is the steps that they would take. Over there on the right under announcements, I think I have a laser pointer there. They could click that and begin creating announcements or editing ones that they've already created. So this is a list of the announcements. I need to come out here, Tony, can you maybe drive a little bit there? This would be the list of announcements that the registrar staff has gone ahead and kind of preloaded. So instead of waiting for the docket to be published weekly, the staff members can now start creating announcements a month, 6 months out, instead of waiting for that publication to come around. And the first one there is the cap and gown orders that we mentioned earlier. If you wanted to create a new one, you would click the new button and go into that, or we're going to look at the cap and gown one. So if you were to click cap and gown, we've already got the information filled in to that web-based form that I was talking, the web browser form. At the top, you have just a general title, your summary, a place to put or organize your announcement in a kind of a logical fashion. The body of the text, there you can see we have a rich text editor so that the staff can highlight their body in hot pink so everybody reads it. We can actually take that rich text editor and edit it to out loud hot pink if we need to do that. Display on dates, we've talked about that. So this is when you decide that this announcement is going to go out to the student. So there's no reason that we can't go ahead and create an announcement and put that display on date 6 months out when you know that it's going to happen. But you're thinking about it today. The deadline, that is the ability to show that under the deadline section. The expiration date, it will fall off once that date occurs so that we're not building these announcements up into a big list for the student. And then here is the kind of the key, the target audience. So we were able to select the groups that we want to push this announcement to. So obviously caps and gowns is going to go to 3 L's rather than 1 L. We select that, and we can categorize this as a responsibility if they have to do something like that. And the very last checkbox is the track announcement. That's kind of the read receipt feature that I talked about. So they can select that and get a report back as to who has at least clicked into this announcement and who has not. Tony, do you want to go to the next slide there? So we've created the announcement now. Let's look at it from the student side or the audience side. This is what the student would see on their home page. So you can see that the announcements and the deadlines are now appropriate for the student user. There on the top under Today, you can see our cap and gown order announcement from the registrar's office there, so we know where it's coming from. Over on the right, you can also see there's the course information that we talked about, being able to keep these announcements wrapped in close with other components that the students are going to use. So it gives them a reason to look at this page and read these announcements, or at least look at them. Under your sites, those are organizations or committees that the student might be involved in. And then over on the left are the quick links, and just areas that the student probably would frequent. So if we were to click on this particular announcement about the caps and gowns, we would jump into, that would take that student into the registrar's office department page with the detail behind that announcement. You can see on the breadcrumbs up there, as a student, we're looking at a department page on the registrar's office. Any questions up to this point? James,
exactly. You have every student in this list already. You have all of their classes and everything else, so you know if you send it out to, Joe Smith's contracts class, it's going to get just exactly those people. So on the read receipt, do you also see the individual names that open the announcement, or is it just how many?
Ian is there.
Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
Yeah. On the read receipt, yeah, we could track to the individual person. So if we were tracking, we could say, okay, we sent this out to the entire class. 19 of it have seen it and acknowledged that they got the message. There's 7 that have not, and I need to contact those people via some other method. So we're just trying to simplify the process.
Can you go back to the page where the student sees the announcement? And what would make them actually acknowledge those messages? As opposed to just reading the headline?
I do, yes.
I think we actually show that maybe in a slide.
You want to go to the next slide there?
Yeah. In reality, there actually could be a little icon there that said we want to make sure that if the student on that particular instance right there, we're just showing the title and the summary of the deadline or the announcement, and we want them to read the full details, and really that other screen really, we're missing our little icon there that says read receipt. They would click that and they would just ask, have you read this message? Yes.
If you go back one page.
Just like there.
So on the student's home page here, if a student saw, okay, well, these are the announcements that I need to look at today as far as deadlines, and here's some general ones, but what's going on next week, or what's going on in the future or in the past that may pertain to me, they can go up to the Docket tab up there at the top, you see, and this is a comprehensive list of everything that applies to that particular user. And if you click, Tony, forward, this is that list, and you can see we're tabbed on the group by department page. So now the student can look at all these departments and see the announcements and can drill into these. We also have the tab for grouping by the categories that we discussed, by type, and then we can use over on the left the filter by keywords. So this gives them a place so that they don't feel like the docket is disappearing. They can still get to the docket for those who used it, but they're seeing things that just pertain to them. So it shrinks that 30 pages into a one-page we can scroll up and down and do some probably better searching. Also, you can see over on the right there, we have the time factor that we discussed, previous a week, or you go forward into time and look at announcements that are coming up. Other questions about read receipts or anything? Yeah. Oh, can I finish up the question about the wit jam?
Okay, well, I was just kind of wondering then, so that, say an announcement went out to a class, so you can actually see if the student got that announcement, and then they can't come back later and say, well, I didn't know. I mean, there's always that notice issue with law students, so.
Right.
Okay.
So they can print a report as to what students did not read this deadline, and then if you have to send your email, then at least you're sending it to those students that are the culprits. Yes.
I was wondering how this overlaps or doesn't overlap with things like Outlook calendar product, where you can set up not appointments, but meetings, get read receipts, and accept, that yes, you'll be there, or whether this is just for general announcements. Is there some overlap here? Is it a competing product? Or how does that work?
A little both. On the announcement side, the announcements don't necessarily integrate with Microsoft Outlook. But on the event side, announcements can be events, they can be documents, they can be calendar event items. The event items can be linked into Outlook, so you can do overlays in your Outlook calendar. So if you have your own personal calendar that has all your information about what you're doing, and then you know you're in Torts 101, you can overlay the Torts calendar onto your calendar so you can see how those two things make them conflict. Okay, so that's the Microsoft built-in integration with SharePoint lists that we're kind of getting for free because we're leveraging the SharePoint content stuff.
Amy?
Can you also, say, click on an event that you intend to go to and somehow, click on it to sign up, or can you have it add as an event in your Outlook calendar or your school calendar?
Yeah, you can pull those. There's a link to Outlook button on event items in SharePoint. So you just click them and you can then see them from Outlook.
And then would it report to the organizer who's attending, or?
In that, if you did it as an announcement with a read, with the tracking turned on, then you could do that. The organizer could see, but that's more of an I just saw this. Doesn't necessarily say I did it. There are surveys in SharePoint too that are built in that you can just drop onto the course website and do surveys kind of as you go. So we could do it that way too.
Bill?
Yes, sir. This is a little more general than what we're looking at here. It just occurred to me, where are these databases maintained? Are there duplicate databases for example, we just had tornado warnings again yesterday. Our systems may go down on campus, but when the students are in their apartments, they may be able to get to the web outside of our system. Are these maintained in 2 locations, or is it just in one housing, or what sort of, we need to get messages out when we don't have the ability to get messages out, is what I'm saying.
Right.
This would be a wonderful way to do that.
Right.
Right. Typically, the schools we've got installed with SharePoint, they've all allowed it to be accessed outside the university. It's not an internal system. It's got a URL like whatever, and you can get it from home or anywhere.
But I mean, where is the information actually housed? Would that be on our servers or your servers?
It can be either way. We can host it for you, or you can host it internally. There is a lot of integration we like to do, so sometimes it's easier to be hosted internally, but we can do it either way. We've got agreements with a data center in St. Louis that has all the redundant power and that sort of thing. So it's kind of a hardened facility. But yeah, you can do it either way. It really doesn't matter to the student where it's sitting as long as you can do the integration and move the information about the course.
I mean, we've been knocked offline several times from severe storms, and we couldn't send anything out to tell the students that we're offline.
Right.
Yeah.
Neil?
Does this integrate with Blackboard or Twin?
Well, I can tell you the story of Yale. We have a component utilities that pull the information out of Blackboard and put it into SharePoint, and then they shut Blackboard down. So, but as far as integration, Tony, you want to speak about the Twin or anything in addition to that?
Right. It can. Where's that course page? Okay. You see those course links over here? those are assuming we're the course management system, right? So they drill that, it'll flow that content out and show up there. We can, if you say, you know what, I just don't like your course management templates that you have in SharePoint, I want to continue to use Twin because I have all this documentation out there, we can have that link jump to a Twin site as well, or a Blackboard site as well. There's an authentication issue we have to work through and that sort of thing, but the same as, linking from any other intranet to a Blackboard site. Typically, people are importing, because that's part of the problem they're trying to solve, is that I've got information in 9 places and the student puts going there. So that's why we like to pull them together.
So if you have a course on Twin, could the student, there's a calendar on Twin, for example, with all that. Could the student move that calendar from Twin over to Outlook through your system?
We haven't done that. The import utility we have is the Blackboard. It'll import from Blackboard objects into SharePoint objects, but we just haven't, no one's asked yet for moving Twin data over. Although we do kind of have a relationship with the guys at Twin, so we've been talking to them about those types of linkage issues for several of our products. So we may have something in the next year on that.
There was another feature or another aspect of announcements that I wanted to point out before we kind of get into the technical, how this is all integrated and the user roles. We've discussed talking through the process of sending department announcements down to the students, but there's also features to allow faculty members or teachers' assistants to push information from the course up to the student. And under your courses here, you can see class cancellation. They can expand these course titles here to see announcements that are happening down inside of the actual courses that they're enrolled in. So the idea here is that we're bringing the information up to the student rather than forcing the student to have to drill into each course to find out what's going on. There's also you see the 522s there. That is the date that any kind of information in that course was updated. So the student can say, well, I was out there on the 21st. Apparently something's been uploaded today or something has changed in that course site, so I need to go in there and look at it. They can expand it and also see any kind of announcement or event. The exam piece there that you see where the start button is, exam 1, that is our take-home exam component that we've integrated in. That component does not lock down the student's computer. That is for honor code type exams that will be distributed electronically and then gathered electronically, and we log when the students pick those up and when they check them back in. And that allows the registrar to batch print these exams, kind of do it a little bit easier of a method than requiring the students to go to the registrar's office and turn in these pieces of paper or files and put them in a computer and print them out and then gather them all up and get them back over to the instructors. Any questions about the course piece? All right, next. I think we went back a couple, didn't we? So, can you go back for 1 second here? So if the student wanted to find out what the story behind class cancellation was, they could click that and then they would jump into the course site for the full detail. And this is an example of a student course site, legal, ethics, and seminar. You can see we have the announcements again, kind of over the front and center, top of the portion of the page. We have our document archives. These dockets pertain to this course. Our course calendar at the bottom. You can see we've integrated our seating chart application, so if they were to click here, they could place themselves in a seat for the seating chart, rather than passing the paper around the room and signing it and then giving it to the teacher's assistants. Here, the students could just open their laptops in class, decide where they're going to sit or log where they are sitting, and get that information into the system. Instructor profile information, that's all pulled in from the Banner student information system, PeopleSoft, Datatel, whatever student information system you're using. So there is integration there. The exam component that I talked about, audio-visual links. These files could be stored on the server or they could be links out to a media database server. And then I believe the next slide is the technical details, which I'll turn over to Tony. and let him kind of talk through those. So that's the integration and the roles.
Yeah, I just get one slide here. So the two key problems that we're fighting with when we do an install of Mylar are, one, how do we know who this person is and what they can do, what courses are they in? So we found that if we have to have somebody maintain that information, somebody in the IT department has to maintain that, or some other department has to maintain it, it's just not going to happen. The roles are going to get out of whack, it's not going to work. So we really lean on automatic, live type integration with the student information system, whether it be DataTel, PeopleSoft, Banner, SIS. And there's a lot of good tools for that on the back end of a SQL Server database. So we, sometimes it's daily, once a night. Some schools have gone a bunch every couple of hours where they update that information. And that pushes into a database inside MyLaw that feeds all these roles and everything else. The other big problem is how do we do authentication? We don't want to have to, I've got to log in for Banner, I've got to log in for Glenn, I've got to log in for Mo. I don't want another one to kind of propagate that problem. So we're really working hard to do, and SharePoint gives us good tools for this, to do various authentication methods. The key, the easiest one out of the box is Active Directory. So we just tie to Active Directory groups and things like that. It can also do LDAP. So if you've got LDAP, Central IT is doing LDAP type things. SharePoint has an LDAP authentication provider. And then the other one, there's another one that where we can kind of hybrid these to use LDAP and SQL Server to wrap it together to get more sophisticated kind of role mappings based on data from anywhere else. So we could pull a username out of LDAP, but then go get roles out of DataTel and mix those together. SharePoint is very good kind of authentication. Okay. And that's pretty much that's the integration problem that we find. If we can overcome that, then this stuff is live. Everything's live. The students, the faculty, everybody, we know who they are, where they go, and then it's very easy to then push things downstream from there. Any questions on the integration components, or not sure?
So, Tony, based on that, you don't actually provision accounts within the system. It's actually just using their existing AD accounts and their existing information out of whatever the address is, right?
Correct. Correct. In some cases, if there is no other system, then if they're not, we also have times where we have roles of people who aren't at the university, affiliates, professors who actually work somewhere else but are not in Active Directory. We augment that with a database where we do create the identity in our database. So we'll say, okay, well, you're not an Active Directory, but I'm going to add you to my affiliate table in SQL Server, and then SharePoint can switch and say, okay, use Active Directory authentication when it's Active Directory, otherwise check in these other, I could check LDAP and then check the SQL Server databases. So we can bring in those other teams to pull all the right people into the place. When, we have to be inclusive on that, and it's not just in the SIS sometimes. There are these other, we talked about departments and how they want to route content to the user. We talked about courses and how instructors or student TAs want to route that information to the audience. There are also just these groups that pop up, research groups, organizations, whatever, that have content that's relevant to students. And if we leave them out, then the information wants to go back into this old Docket PDF format and try it out. And so we really work hard to kind of get those people included in the machine.
A lot of your course features, seem very similar to what Blackboard offers. Well, what do you offer that Blackboard doesn't offer? Is it? You can do the announcement type things in Blackboard too.
Sure.
What is it? Just another competing product with pretty much the
Yeah,
same features, or?
The difference I see with Blackboard, we've got some features that are, there's there's the seating chart, which I don't know if Blackboard has. We've got our take-home exam kind of pieces that are, I think, specialized to the Walmart a little bit. But Blackboard sees the world, everything in the world is a course, right? If you say I have an admissions department, they're always making a course called the admissions department.
Oh, I see.
If you have a research organization, let's make a course called the research organization. So it's kind of a flatter model than we have. What we do is we see the organization as, one, here's courses and courses that are tied to an SIS system that are live and changing all the time, and add drops, things like that. We pick up that live through the system. And then we really realize that the structure on the other side is kind of what we call an organizational unit structure. We have the law school, and then we have departments within the law school, and then there are departments under the departments that maybe are responsible for other pieces of it. So there's 3 key trees in the MyLaw configuration: the course tree, the departmental tree, and then there's the other type of organizations, research groups, etc.
in addition to that, I mean, from just looking at the course management side, we discussed announcements, and I don't know if you wanted to go back to that. But we also, I mean, a lot of it, you're absolutely right, a lot of the features are the same. We've got, there are discussion boards, there's a course wiki, there's course blogs, there's a student Dropbox, which I think is something that Answer also offers. So, a lot of those components are very similar. The other thing too that I'm not sure Blackboard handles is branding. I think a Blackboard site is a Blackboard site. I think you could change some color schemes and things of that nature. But really, the solution becomes a branding aspect of your university. So have your university logo at the top. Fonts would be consistent with public-facing site, things of that nature. So just a couple additional.
Yeah, I'd also add in, we don't disable any of the standard SharePoint functionality. So you have full SharePoint functionality in this course subsite. So if you got a group of 5 students that wanted to create a group within the class, they can create a subsite off the course and use templates, any of the SharePoint templates for collaborating underneath the course. You can add pieces that you don't even see here. So it's very flexible, very straightforward to create additional content templates and things like that.
So it's managed within the school in a sense.
Exactly. Yeah, there's a lot of pieces that come automatically that we implement via SharePoint type web parts, but we don't break any of that standard SharePoint ability to just collaborate with anybody from any point in that tree that we've discussed. So if you want to collaborate within the registrar's department on some project, you can just create a project site and throw it up there. And in that project site, they can have calendars and document archives and document check-in and check-out, all the standard SharePoint functionality. So that was a big design aspect of ours. Is we didn't want to, it was easy for us to compete with Blackboard because we were using all the Microsoft standard collaboration components to do that. It was just a matter of us putting the templates together and then wiring them to law school data coming out of DataTel or PeopleSoft or wherever it might be at, Banner.
We've got a few minutes left, so we'd like to open it up for kind of open discussion and ask.
Can I ask real quick, how many people are using SharePoint or looking at SharePoint? What other tools are you using? If you're not using SharePoint, what do you use for collaboration type work?
Email?
Just straight email? Okay.
File server?
Okay. Wikis? Yeah. And wikis are another thing we include inside core subsites. So discussion boards and wikis are, again, those are standard SharePoint components that you can hang off of a core subset.
Does the file server, does it allow document versioning and things of that nature?
The pieces of it we're using right now don't, but we could implement it. We don't have people yet asking.
Yeah, that is one of the features of this. Any of the document libraries, course documents, or all of the items that are in there, we can. If it's a setting that you can just turn on versioning, and so you can see, especially I see this, on a course site, the instructor might have materials that he used this semester. He wants to reuse them for next semester. He wants to maybe tweak a couple things, but he wants to go back and see what he did last semester. He can either navigate back to his course site from the previous semester, or he can just check the versioning of the document. So those are other features.
Yeah.
You haven't yet installed this or offered it to entire organizations or institutions, just law schools, right?
Law schools.
But if you were going to do that, can you have the quick links course homepage links different for, say, one group from another, so that, say, the law department would have different links from the undergrad departments?
Yes,
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
So-
Almost everything you see.
In essence, this is portable to entire institutions.
Yes. Yeah. And on the installs we've done, some of the installs we're talking about, there's discussion of should the business school be looking at this and should do this. So our expertise is in the law market because of the CCHIM product, which initially introduced us to this market. But I don't see that we're necessarily long term. Are we limited to the law market? I don't think so. But we're a fairly small company, so we just focus our resources on one market.
So if you had something as large as an entire institution do an install, would that be, the same price point, and it's just the implementation and integration costs that would be incrementally larger?
Yes, I'd have to look at we'd have to think about that. I'd have to understand where it would affect us cost-wise, I guess. So if you said you wanted to use it for the law school and the business school and something else all at once, I guess the typical license is for the law school at one at a time. But we could work something out to do that, I'm sure.
Other questions? Yes?
Do you have any kind of tracking mechanisms or anything built in to determine how much use it's actually getting? Are the students, where you implemented it here, are the students using it on a daily basis, or you get half the students that access it once every couple of weeks?
The tracking feature we discussed here is coming out of the next kind of release, so we don't have any experience on that particular feature. I do know if it's down for like maintenance or something, that people go crazy.
Well,
I know the acceptance is high enough that we have to have maintenance windows that are at between 8:30 and 10 o'clock at night sometimes.
I think what you're asking, Greg, is, our students using this, and I know that at WashU, at places we've implemented at WashU and at Yale, I think the students have wholly bought into it. I mean, they're using it regularly. And if I go down and we look at, there's an easy mechanism in SharePoint that tells you when the last time a site was updated or accessed. And there are tracking tools that kind of similar to maybe a web trends or something like that, where you can tell who is going to what. It's being used for sure. Discussion boards are real popular on each of these core sites. I think the wikis are being used regularly, and in these particular cases, it's where they got to go to get their materials.
They're
not passing out stuff anymore. They go here, and in addition to going to here for their core stuff, they get the added benefit of seeing what does Department A want to tell me about this opportunity or this deadline.
The testing is integrated in as well, so this is the only place to take your test for this course. So, in some ways we're forcing them there, but in other ways it's easier for them to do it this way. So,
Bill?
I may have had a mental hiccup. Did you say this is RSS compatible?
It is. Yeah, each of those, for example, course announcements, from a department, or even I think you can do it from a document archive or a calendar. Each one of those you can export it as an RSS feed, and then there's a built-in RSS reader that is default with SharePoint. The presentation isn't all that beautiful, so that can be customized. But yeah, it's absolutely. And actually, you can take RSS feeds from other locations. So if you wanted to stick a RSS weather web part on your student homepage, which we had a request for, in the past, that's very doable too. So, yeah.
Amy?
So if I want to put a link to, say, a CALI resource on my course page, where do you put things like that?
do we address that?
Well, I was just going to say, this section over here, if you wanted to do a link to a CALI resource, actually, and this is the next model. In the current model, there's actually another web part here that has links to content pages and links. And essentially, it's a link list that you can create a whole other page, pseudo kind of page-like content. It's all RTF. They can click on that, and it'll take them, it'll refresh the page, and it'll give them just the details of the CALI conference. If you wanted to link to the CALI conference external site, it's really no different. It's the same list that you're going to navigate to, and you're just saying, I want to choose an external link as opposed to an internal link.
So if I want to organize a course according to modules or topics or something, I don't want them to all be lumped into a big documents folder and then over here are the links. I want it to be in sort of a reading list.
It's actually a request that we got from Yale recently. And essentially, as you're kind of seeing this here, and now that you brought it up, maybe it's a more widely, maybe it's a request that other schools might want. But essentially what you're seeing here is they've got course documents and audio, video links and external links and all of this stuff that's, separated. What they requested is that they say, I want to create, similar to what Blackboard does now, where they say, I want to create course materials. What kind of course material do you want? I want it to be a link. And it's almost like this kind of hierarchy of, well, day one I need this, day two I need this, day three, is that kind of how we're describing? Yeah, that is the exact request they got.
Or when you're studying, for instance, as a student, when you're studying, you want to go over, say, a certain kind of real estate transaction. And you don't want to have to know, what week you took that.
Sure.
You just want, the name of that subject, and you want to look at all the materials for that topic.
We don't show, well, that's kind of categories too.
Absolutely.
Kind of how you see the plus and minus up on course announcements there. We can do any kind of content in those types of categories. So when you define some piece of content, you can say this is related to module 5. And then a new category drops up that's module 5 and you plus it up and you can see all that information.
Do you put them in a certain order inside a category?
Sorting is very straightforward.
Other questions before we wrap it up? Anything that you did not see that you wished was up here, or ideas or suggestions for us?
What about branding? Like, can we change all that green stuff to purple stuff and put our own icons on it and stuff?
Yeah, it's actually SharePoint uses what is called ASP.NET Master Pages. So really, what you're doing is you're manipulating 2 to 3 master pages. They are semi-complex. There is quite a bit of CSS behind the scenes that it does require, updating to match school fonts and things of that nature. But again, that's one of the advantages to our application is we kind of sell that as branding is part of the package. So it's, and then once we do kind of the hard part in getting the structure set up, yeah, you can go in and you can, if you've got an IT staff that's capable of doing that kind of stuff, we're not going to say you can't do it. We're not going to say you can't do it.
Also at Yale, they don't even call it MyLaw. A lot of the schools will change the name to their particular portal name.
Just read my mind.
Okay. Anything else? Everybody's good? Was that pretty much what you wanted, information you wanted to get? On behalf of Appointlink, thank you so much for coming to the presentation, and it's an honor to talk to all of you. And if you have any other questions, stop by our booth, or if you would like us to come to your law school and talk with you and give you a more detailed presentation or demo for your group or team at your law school, please feel free to get a hold of me. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, it is.
Sid just got named to be the associate dean at the law school, so he is, you know what, I don't know if he signed the contract. Sit on his desk. Come effective July 1st, I think that's true, that's the last 2 weeks, so it's such 3 weeks that he may not want to put. I don't know if they're actually really what's it like.
Anything you can send me, I'm not sure.
If you want to schedule a WebEx or something, Dan can do that type of presentation.
And then maybe just, you know, so let's see where we go with this. All the shows work and 6:46. Yeah, it is.
The whole auditing process. All the documents.
That's where I'm from.
Thank you.
I was
Render,
undergrad, law school,
Actually, I never ran.
yeah, I was shot.
It would be nice to have something like these guys here to overlay it.
I didn't really look very much like the doing sort of in the beginning stages of replacing our law school right now. It's still nobody knows what it's built on.
My boss is
You're planning a trip to
But the university is going to be implementing PeopleSoft. We do use Blackboard.
Yeah, we talk to give a more detailed demo.
In the sense that we have like the other
Real companies had you meet with a couple people from the law school technology maybe a couple people from university CIT and see what we can do.
But in terms of speed.
Yeah, let's see it.
Can't be thinking.
Of course I am.
But here is my card.
Real well, real well, yeah.
I've heard of this, I got my boss.
Covers, SharePoint. Oh, people sort of had a whole mirror.
Right.
They can route transactions, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Now that.
You gotta have multiple servers, you gotta have different support, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, they have it, so your
John,
data center catches on time, burns to the ground, that's still on.
yeah.
I see that. When our systems go down, it's not, there's nothing being doing it.
Well, I think they love what I know the hard one for their kids.
We're not going to get on that.
Yeah, so she's moved down there too?
No, well, they live down there and she just commutes up.
Okay, I know, I see her around the university.
Yeah, she's worked a sort of I think a 4-day-a-week schedule. And I think we're talking to her, she just stays up there a couple of nights a week. For her schedule.
Find out where he's living. They got a lot of family, so.
Yeah, they're living on James Island.
Are they?
Yeah, if you know Harbor, yeah, you go all the way out Harbor to the end, and take a right. That's the subdivision.
I've been down, I was down there a lot, man. Nephew, yeah, the graduation.
Yeah.
And Father's Day. I mean, we've got state
Sure enough.
between us all.
But I wasn't close.